They were really the pioneers of doing that. They were very, very open to it, and I know it seems like such a small thing. It's not. It's huge, right? Just to have that there to say, hey, we are an organization, we are a company that's going to welcome you as you are. You can bring your authentic selves, however you present yourself, and we're going to, at David Adams, we accept you. So, it's something that's real easy to do, right? But so many folks don't do it. So I would encourage those of you who do have an online presence to just add a statement, add something, that just says, hey, we accept you as you are. There's millions of different examples out there on how to do that.
Yeah, and I think what's important is having a voice. Like, there's so many collectors out there that look at social media or look at what breakers are and think that's the only way to do it. Right, and today at the booth, I saw Lily over here, spelled awesome, right? Interview McCall for her YouTube channel on Sport Reports. What is it? Sports Talk with Lily, right?
How awesome.
She just asked questions and was great. That Sport Talk with Lily looks very different to a bunch of people screaming and throwing boxes out. But this is why I think it's important. You said there's no right way to collect. There's also no right way to be a creator. There's no right, and the fact that Lily has a voice, I would dare us, we all can have a corner, right? Because when we decide to be quiet, we unconsciously tell people that we don't exist. Right? So I think for me, the question I have is how do I create more content to be as brave as Lily? And be as authentic as that. So sorry to embarrass you.
No, everybody should check out her YouTube channel.
Check out her YouTube channel. We're going to make her Insta famous.
Yes, because this is being broadcast on the internet too.
Yeah, so there.
Yep. Uh-oh. Now you're going to get lots of hits.
So.
So the other company that is really walking the talk is Topps. I mentioned that before. They helped us out with the A&G cards. Panini also partnered with us for some NFT giveaways. That'll be on Saturday, I believe.
Awesome, yep.
As I mentioned earlier, David Adams, of course, Parkside. So we couldn't do this without our sponsors. And the really good thing is that the big names in the industry have stepped up. They really have said, we love what you're doing. And Topps, when they brought me in to speak, they said, we don't want it to end here. We want to continue on. So we're going to be partnering with Topps with lots of different things in the future. So keep an eye out for that. Now, those females who are in the audience, and I do have to say that because we do have to differentiate a little bit, right? We have a Facebook group called Women in the Hobby. If you're not a member of our Facebook group, please search us and ask to join. It's exclusively for females. And we have close to 400 people in there, and we buy, sell, we trade, we talk about cards, we talk about experiences that we have in the hobby. And we don't mean to be exclusive, but it is considered a safe space for women to go to talk. And you may say, well, why is that needed? Just because you don't see it happening, remember, doesn't mean it's not happening. There is a lot of misogyny online. There's a lot of women who are just getting into collecting who are afraid to ask questions in certain areas because of the way that they are, the way that they're perceived.
Well, and I get this question a lot in a lot of my consulting where people say, Anne-Marie, women are not as big as sport fans as men, right? And I always do, I'm a qualitative researcher, I worked in sales, so I do the answer, which is, tell me more, right? It's a non-judgmental, right? I say, tell me more about that. And they say, well, when I go to a bar and there's a sport game on, you don't see women sitting there at the bar watching it. And I go, well, that's probably true. But the same thing I'll say about a lot of sport card shows. Is it that women aren't collecting, or is it that sport card shows are not places where women want to go and be a consumer, right? That causation and correlation do not always mix. So I think partly it's to understand, who is there. Women control 83% of household spending in this country. The stuff that's happening in this building these next few days are controlled by women. They may not be the ones one handing over the money, but they're the ones that probably did the budget. That's what we know from consumer behavior, right? So again, using non-inclusive language, looking at women and saying, well, this is a card for your husband, those sorts of things, that will impact the way that people are using their dollar signs.
Absolutely, and we also know that you don't want to hear just us speak.
Yes.
So believe it or not, well, first, let me ask you this. Are there any questions before we bring up our friends? Anybody have any experiences they'd like to share? She controls 100%.
She controls 100% of the spending. Okay.
All right.
I like that hat.
That's
a
good.
great hat.
That's good. Anybody else control 100% of the household? No.
Mm-hmm.
But no, we appreciate all of you being here, and I think now we can probably call up our
Yeah.
friends. We're gonna bring up some more diverse voices, so you can hear about some of their experiences in the hobby as well. So
we got
come
some
on
cool
up,
people to
friends.
come up and chat. Erica, here they come. We didn't want to just hear from us, and part of it is that there's not one voice, right? There's
Yeah.
not one experience. So we wanted to bring up some of our friends who are involved in a variety of ways in this hobby to maybe talk a little bit about their experiences, but also to give you a chance to say, what do they wish that you knew about them?
Yeah.
I think these mics are on too.
You want to sit? You want to stand? What do you want? You're tall. You can sit. If I sit down, nobody can see me. That's the problem. No, but we'll sit as well, and I'll give you the mic.
Let's see, I'll turn this on.
All right.
All right, let's see if these will work. You want to sit? Sit right
We'll
here.
we'll pass the mic. We'll pass the mic around. Yeah. I'm gonna start down here, Emery. Okay.
Okay, cool.
All right. So if you could just introduce yourself, please, and give us your experience as a woman in the hobby. Talk about who you collect, why you collect, how long you've been collecting, etc.
Thank you. You guys are doing an awesome job. Thank you for doing this. My name is Angie. My sports card Instagram is Angie Sports Cards. So if you'd like to follow, I collect mainly basketball. And I collect predominantly men's basketball cards, some women's. I collect a mix of things, but when I was a kid, the NBA was the only main basketball league around, and so that's what I followed, and that's what I enjoy, and that's what I still collect to this day. So my main PCs are Jordan, Giannis, Hall of Fame basketball, and I'm trying to get into more. There's some great women's basketball cards that I'm after too, and like we were talking before this, I'm just a regular collector. I'm just like anybody else. I'm not, just because I'm a female collector doesn't mean I'm any different. I'm looking for the stuff that I want to buy, and I want to complete my sets, and I'm on the PSA registry, and so it's not I don't think I'm any different than a regular collector, and it's nice to see more women getting in the hobby, and I honestly don't know why. I try to recruit my friends because I don't know why there are not more women who do this. It's such a great mix of sports and just the history behind the cards, and the collecting, and the making deals, and the investing component of it. And so I love everything about the hobby. I love being here and just being able to find amazing things that you otherwise can't find. So I think my experience has been overall positive being a woman in the hobby. At my local card shows, they kind of know who I am, and they treat me, I think, very similar to the guys who are there. I think the things that are helpful, women who collect, we have money to spend. We want to, complete our collections, and just to, not make assumptions about your knowledge level in sports, and what you're there to do. So I think just to kind of be inclusive, and to assume that there are, rather than assuming, oh, you're a woman, you probably don't collect, or oh, why do you collect? Just, oh, hey, what are you into? What do you like? And how can I help you out? And so I think those are the most important things for inclusivity.
Awesome, and she's being very humble. She has an amazing collection of NBA cards, Michael Jordan and Giannis, and oh my gosh.
I believe she quoted me, there's 2,000 slabs in her basement.
Yes.
Over
She has
2,000
an
slabs.
Incredible collection. So if anybody has any rare Jordans or Giannis, she's got the money. She's willing to spend it. No.
She's buying 20% over comps, folks.
Yeah. So, okay.
Awesome. We'll turn it over to Erica, and we got a powerful duo right here.
Hi, my name is Erica Massenberg, and this is my daughter.
Natiri.
So we both collect together. Just a small background about myself. I used to collect when I was about 9 years old with my aunt. Collected for a few years. Then I stopped. Then I recently got back into it over 3 years and started collecting with my daughter. And we have a ton of fun.
Yes.
What
Yes.
sports do you like to collect?
Basketball.
Basketball. Does collecting make you have fun?
Yes.
Do you enjoy it?
Yes.
Do you enjoy ripping?
Yes.
What else do you enjoy about sports cards?
Do I got a square part because I love the autograph and
You
stuff.
love autographs?
Yes.
Yes. So overall, me and my daughter have a really wonderful time coming to sports card shows. It's an outlet. Like, we have fun going to the movies or the mall or skating. Same way as sports card shows. That's how we view it as something normal, and we just talk about it. I use it as lessons to teach her, accounting, spelling, different things like that. So she's like constantly learning in an engaging way. Also, too, we try to include some of her friends, even though they might not be necessarily interested at first, but gradually they start to ask more questions. And even some want to come to sports card shows. So I think that's something you can do with kids, just like introducing it to their friends and stuff as well. So.
Thank you. I just want to start off by saying that I thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this. For inviting me to be a part of the Women in the Hobby booth has been such a wonderful experience for me. I wanted to give a shout out to the Card Shop Live app for bringing in Heather the Heat Hardy this morning. Ty at Bullpen actually had boxing cards made for her because she didn't have any, and she was signing them this morning with us, and we ended up ripping a box of baseball cards. That was a pretty awesome experience. She also grew up loving to play baseball, and she talked about that a lot. Like, before I go into myself, something that I learned today from Heather is the fact that when you're a little girl, you sometimes see these things that are for boys and are for boys, and you think to yourself, why do I like these boy things? And that's how she kind of shared her story with me about loving baseball, but having to play softball after a certain point. And kind of once she started boxing, they told her that there was no way you can make money being a professional boxer because only the men do. And she said also, again, why do I like these boy things? They're supposed to be for boys. And she's actually one of the first most celebrated female boxers in the sport. She got some of the first big sponsorships. So that was a really special experience for me. And I learned something from her is that even being a woman in the hobby today, we're still a small percentage. It's really important to put yourself out there and show that this isn't only for boys, and women can also be successful in this and make this their career if they want to. So I feel like I've gained a new sense of like purpose for that today and being here today. My name is Stephanie Garcia, also known as Mama Breaks on Instagram. I started my journey into falling in love with baseball when I was 9 years old, when my stepfather took me to my first Dodger game. So I am extremely close with my stepfather, and I believe that we were able to have such a close relationship because of baseball. So we grew up going to games together and watching games every night. And I started with my love of cards with Pokemon cards. So that's what I collected heavily as a kid. So I love how cards look. I love baseball. Once I caught wind of everything happening during quarantine with cards, I got back into it, and I decided that I wanted to start collecting with my boys. So I have a 3-year-old boy and a 1.5-year-old son, and that's why I decided to call myself Mama Breaks. And this past year has been such, honestly, just an unbelievable experience for me. The amount of support that I have gotten in the past year is beyond my wildest dreams. So, and for me to sit here today, when 1 year ago I was watching this happen through Instagram online and never thinking that I would be here on a stage, is amazing. So again, I just want to say thank you, and thank you to the companies and everyone giving me an opportunity to be here today. So
Thank you. You know, we have had very, very positive experiences, and I think it's important to point that out. You know, we're not up here saying that everything's negative or anything like that, but what we are here saying is that, yes, these things do happen here and there, right? But you know, folks like yourself who are so kindly sitting here listening to us talk, you know, we know that you all would speak up if you hear something, you know, see something, say something, as I mentioned before. I think that you know, moving forward, the hobby, what we see in the future, it's going to continue to evolve as society evolves, right? And there are ebbs and flows to this thing. We've seen that with the ups and downs of the market, et cetera. And, you know, as things change, so will this hobby. You agree, Anne-Marie?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the society, you know, I always love that Kushner quote, "The world only spins forward." You know, that and let's be honest, this hobby really isn't about the cards, it's about the people, right? And I know that sounds like a Hallmark sticker, but you know, I think it's the relationships. Especially when people say to me, "Are you surprised that the hobby took off during COVID?" And I said, "No, because we were more disconnected than we've ever been. We're not a mammal that was meant to distance. You know, we're pack animals." So, excuse the pun. Actually, it's an amazing pun.
When she starts talking about pack animals, that's
Yeah.
when I know we're about to wrap up.
But you know, I think it is about that, about the connection. So I think the last question, you know, that we have that I think might be the most important question for our esteemed panel is, what do you wish that breakers and dealers and content creators and card producers knew about you? That
Who wants to tackle
maybe they
that?
don't. That's a big question.
Angie wants to.
Angie definitely wants to.
I mean, I think, like I said before, I just like to collect. I love everything about collecting. And so I think just being inclusive, you know, assuming that women are there because of their interest in sport, they're going to, you know, make purchases, they're going to be involved, they're going to participate. I think just giving women the chance to be involved is something that I look for. And I also think, like, I try to do this myself, just getting more women interested in the hobby and promoting it, which is good for all of us. It's good for all collectors. It's good for sports. It's good for women's sports. It's good for sports in general. So I think just trying to make sure that women are more visible and to use inclusive language. Actually, a very interesting thing, and this is, I see this all the time with my Instagram page. Almost all people that write to me or ask questions about my cards are like, "Hey dude, hey man." It's called Angie Sports Cards, which is generally a feminine name, and I sign my name, and I'm not offended, but the assumption is always, always, always that I'm a man. And so I think just to be aware, no, there is a woman who collects. I do happen to collect men's cards predominantly, but that doesn't mean, you know, that I'm a dude. So I think just having more awareness that there are women who are interested in the hobby and they will be involved, and to be more inclusive, especially in language.
When everyone breaks or anything calls me a dude, I always ask for my 30 cents.
Oh my gosh.
Pay it quickly.
We're gonna continue on, but I do want to say something for those of you in the audience. We do have limited edition Topps cards. So after we're done here, which is just going to be a minute, come on up. Please don't rush the stage. We will get you our
won't throw them at
limited
you.
edition card. So okay, next.
I love cards, and my mom probably started, and kids really started cards, and I was younger. My mom probably she teach me how to do cards and stuff, and I started like doing tennis, so I started like tennis cards and stuff. Like Serena.
Okay.
And I love cards because it's my thing to do.
And Nateri wanted me to tell a quick story about in December, me and her took a trip to Alaska. We had a wonderful time. And while we were eating dinner, I was like, you know, we should check out a sports card shop and go there for about like 10 minutes. We found a wonderful shop. We were there for over 3 hours. The owner, you know, and the locals, they all made us feel welcome. You know, it was just a wonderful experience. So I just say that to say, even in spots you might not think sports card shops are, you should still check it out, you know, because you might have a really wonderful experience.
So I think what I would want dealers, you said content creators, to know about me is literally the story that I just told you. And coming from being myself, a breaker, a dealer, a content creator, I pride myself on doing that and hearing stories. So I encourage everyone else. That's why I'm trying my best to do like the hobby hunt, and we need to do more girl-centered things and just sharing our stories, because like they said, it's at the end of the day, the cards are only worth what we put value into them. So the more we share our stories about our love for baseball, basketball, certain player and all that, it's going to continue increasing the value of our cards. So
Absolutely. We would love for all of you to stop by our booth as well and grab some of the limited edition Parkside cards that have our logo on it. It's, again, an exclusive set that Parkside created for us.
Yeah, I want to thank all of you for being here today. And this is hopefully just a part of a conversation.
I just want to, I'm looking for female baseball card collectors specifically. So if you want to find me somewhere
That's
today.
me.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Yes, I have you on my list, Julie.
Awesome.
So yeah, are there any questions? Anybody, want to share any of their experiences? You feel free to come on up. I know everybody loves being on stage, right?
Everyone
Oh,
loves
that's
being on
just
stage.
me.
Yep.
We really appreciate everyone staying and listening to us speak and recognizing the importance of this topic. Just really appreciate your care and paying attention to us. So thank you all so very much. Please feel free to come on up. So here's the deal. These cards that we're about to give you, first of all, they're awesome. Second of all, on the back of the cards, we have our Instagram and our Facebook group, and also our website, which is maybe not live yet, but going to be live very soon, womeninthehobby.com. Topps has not put Allen and Ginter out yet. Okay, so these are literally the first Allen and Ginter cards that are being given away, and they're of Rachel Balkovich. How do I say her name?
Balkovich,
yeah. And Sam Mewis, as Anne-Marie mentioned earlier. So, thank you all so much.
Thank
They're
you so
very
much.
limited, very, very limited.
So come get your cards.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for our panelists.
And thank you to the National for allowing us to come up here as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I don't know how we're gonna do it.
Yeah, we can help. Here.
All right. There you go. Awesome.
Fun. We might have to dinner or something. This was really fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thank you. Thank you.
There's some shirts to give out too. If this is cool.
Thank you.
Two guys in the back and me. You're welcome.
Here we go.
And the shirt.
What was that?
Sure, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, they're just so limited. So if you got us,
If we run out, Topps has them.
yeah. Well, you already got a bunch, so I just want to make sure other people get them.
Yeah,
I don't know what size these are, but yeah.
You need a shirt?
Yeah.
All right. So if that's not the right size, come to our. If that's not the right size, come to our booth. And we'll get you.
Come by the booth for the shirts.
Right past that. Oh, thank you.
Yep, the booths will be right around over here.
Side of the big rack.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Great. Yeah, she was great.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for coming. There you go. Enjoy.
Thank you for coming.
They're glossy A&G too. They're kind of sick. Thank you so
Awesome.
much. Yeah. Oh, it's all right. It's not your fault.
Thank you so much.
I mean,
Oh,
maybe
that's
it is-
fine.
Maybe it is your fault, but that's all right.
We don't care. We rolled with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. You know what? It's overworked.
Did you
too.
get your cards? Now you got them. Oh,
Yeah,
thank
smart.
you.
Smart. Thank you.
Oh, good. We have extras.
Great speakers and just like your knowledge.
Oh, thank you.
I think it went well. I didn't talk too long or mumble.
No, you did. You did fantastic. Did you
Okay,
need
good.
cards?
Oh, cards? Yeah.
Yeah.
Get your cards. Okay, 2 more. All right. love it that you like to rip. I like to rip.
Oh
things,
my
too.
goodness.
Yeah.
All right,
That'll be
I gotta
great.
pick something up at PSA quick.
I'll bring some tomorrow for you if you want another box to rip.
Oh yeah.
Good job. So fun.
Make a lot more money. Or they make advertisers more money. No, that's for darn sure. Well, that was good. Yeah, we have a booth. We're right around the corner there. Okay. Are we? What's that? I don't. I mean, doing anything with hockey? You mean in terms of like hockey cards? Yeah. I mean, we have. No, we're all sports. Oh, all sports. No. Well, yeah. I mean, she's a soccer player, baseball player. Yeah. I mean, our group literally is brand new. So we are literally just getting started. We want to partner with other, companies and. I think Upper Deck does some hockey stuff. We'll probably,
What?
do stuff with them. So,
Yeah. Well,
sorry.
so you're fine. You're totally fine. I haven't seen anybody at the Leighton booth. Rich and Sarah.
They're not here.
Oh, okay.
They're about to have a baby.
Yeah, I know. I thought they were already going to.
But they have a surrogate.
Right.
So they're just literally waiting on her. Baby's due any day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
So they couldn't come. But Sarah's, Sarah really wants to be here. She's like, if the baby comes after the national, he's grounded already. But yeah, she really wanted to be here, but bigger things.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff from Women in the Hobby. Always a pleasure. And next up, top of the hour, we're going to have the crew from Wrestling Card Price Guide.
That's crazy.
Talking a little wrestling, which has really grown in popularity beyond just its core fan base. Topps has done an excellent job with the product. And then Panini, after acquiring the license, also has done an excellent job acquiring the product. In fact, Chris, you just came back and you said that you just purchased some wrestling cards.
Yeah, I'm a big fan, huge fan of wrestling. WWE, AEW, more WWE though.
Okay.
But
yeah.
AEW is really coming along.
It's really coming along, especially every time WWE lets some of their talent go.
They all go to AEW.
Yeah.
So
I remember when they used to go to Impact.
Yeah, they did, and they still do. There are some people or some characters that are from WWE in Impact now, but AEW is paying more money to all these wrestlers.
I'll tell you, one of my favorite products back in the day was when TriStar was in the trading card game. They did a Knockouts product for Impact.
Oh yeah, for Impact.
It's fantastic, and they had two SKUs.
Okay.
There was a hobby SKU, and there was one called Knockouts Revealed.
Oh yeah.
And several of the inserts were a little bit more risque, if you will.
That's what draws a crowd, Rob.
Yeah. So
They're risque.
But their foray into trading cards, meaning TriStar, was rather short-lived, but to this day, that's one of my favorite sets. I mean, I've got autos from Velvet Sky.
I was gonna say Velvet Sky had to be in
Madison
there.
Rain,
Yeah.
Angelina Love, Tracy Brooks,
Miss Tessmacher.
Miss Tessmacher,
Sure.
absolutely. Not who's the big African?
Oh, no. I know who you mean. I forget her name.
Yeah, there's some great talent
Yeah.
on that roster. And so while we're killing time waiting for Wrestling Card Price Guide, I just so happen to have a box of Topps WWE Chrome that
Sasha Banks and Drew McIntyre on the cover.
absolutely. So
Sasha's kind of in limbo right now. She walked out on the WWE.
yeah, because
So-
there was that fiasco with her and Naomi.
And they
What exactly?
sort
I
of-
kind of missed the details on
I
that.
think it was a creative deal that they weren't very happy with the direction of the show and their character during that show, so they walked out, and they haven't been heard from since, and that's been, I think, about a month now. Some rumors about them maybe ending up in AEW, but they're still under contract. The WWE has not let them go.
Not let them go
Right.
officially yet.
Sure. So I guess they're going to wait and see, but Sasha Banks is a huge draw. I can't imagine them getting rid of her.
Absolutely. Well, it looks like the wrestling guys are here. I mean, we're ready. If you guys are ready to go, you can
Are
start.
you guys
early.
ready? Yeah, cool.
Take your time. So in the meantime, let's open some packs and
Sure.
give them away to the audience.
We got a lot of wrestling fans here.
Shinsuke
Yeah?
Nakamura.
Nice. WWE or AEW, guys? Which ones?
Ray
WWE,
Ripley.
raise your hands. I like it. AEW, raise your hands. Fans of AEW and WWE, raise your hands. You can't have them both, I guess, right? No.
Fans of indie wrestling, Ranger.
There you go.
Are the screens live?
Ooh, we
No?
got a numbered one here. Anyone a fan of Chad Gable? There you go. I'm surprised wrestling cards aren't even more popular.
We're gonna be
Right? I agree with you.
working on it.
I agree. I mean, it really doesn't go out of style, and there's so much nostalgia to wrestling between the characters and the history. It's phenomenal. We got a nice Chad Gable, Rob. Numbered
Sami Zayn.
out of 150, Chad Gable.
Little turquoise action there.
Sure, yeah. Nice refractor.
Finn Balor. Sami Zayn again, non-refractor. Murphy.
Who's the favorite wrestler
Braun
today,
Strowman.
guys? Who do you guys like? Becky Lynn? Becky Lynch? Theory? You're a Theory guy? Not many people like Theory.
Who said Drew McIntyre back there?
Drew McIntyre? Nice.
There you go.
Who's the future of WWE? He's in AEW. Riddle? Anyone a fan of Braun Breaker?
Kushida.
That's my guy. I like Braun Breaker a lot.
Shotzi Blackheart.
How about Cora Jade? Anyone a fan of Cora Jade? No one knows who she is, I
Big
bet.
E.
No? NXT?
So what
No?
are there, 2 refractors in a pack, it looks like?
Yeah, I think so.
Drew Gulak.
I think he's actually from Philadelphia. Does it say Philadelphia on the back of that?
Is he a Philly guy?
I think he's a Philly guy. He's a Philly guy. We got a Riddle refractor. Yeah, you guys like Riddle. That guy back there likes Riddle. There you go, the Ultimate Warrior shirt.
Kayla Braxton.
Can't go wrong with Ultimate Warrior.
I'll tell you, Bailey was someone who I never thought they'd have turn heel. I thought she was the whole hugs and
Yeah.
love thing forever.
She had that whole wavy arm dudes in the beginning there. They went away.
Aleister Black. Refractor of Murphy. What ladies did you pull? Those are the
ladies?
ones I care about.
Rob's all about the ladies.
Honestly, sweaty dudes.
Aren't we all about the ladies?
Half sweaty naked dudes is
Yeah.
not my...
Yeah, I'm okay with the half naked sweaty dudes. They're okay. And the ladies. Nikki Cross, I got. Bianca Belair. Any fans of Bianca Belair?
Man, she would hurt you with that braid.
Is that real? Do you guys think that's
There's
actually
no
real?
way. There's no way
Can you
that's
grow your hair that long without cutting it? That's all I got.
John Morrison. Dabo Cato. 5 Timers Club. That's a nice insert. Rey Mysterio.
Rey Mysterio. Those are nice cards. I like those. A little Charlotte Flair action. There we go. I like that. Woo! Yeah.
Shelton Benjamin.
Anyone from out of town here today? Raise your hand.
You're ready.
Where are we from? Where are we from?
You ready? Yeah.
Florida? Where in Florida? I'm from Tampa. Nice.
They're ready.
Small world. Where are you from? Miami? A lot of Florida action here. All right.
Another 5 Timers Club, John Cena and
Maryland?
Alexa Bliss. All right, we're going to bring on the guys from Wrestling Card Price Guide. We'll put
Sonya
these
Deville.
cards down front for you guys. Help yourself. Don't be rude.
There we go. Have fun, guys.
Chairs this way. Okay, so they want 4 chairs in the middle. We can have the 6. So we can have 6, but we only have 4 legs. Yeah. You know this one here. You get this one here. We can squeeze more this way. Here, Tony.
Up by the groups that we're doing.
Thank you. We can share our. Share mine. Yeah, perfect. Here's our notes. I can, locked in. There we go. I got them. There we go. What's going on, people? Where's Josh? Where's what? I know where Josh is. Hey, I want those cards. Just shuffle them up and let's have card war. Yeah. Is it 5 yet? What time is it? Kurt Angle. Favorite wrestler? Probably Ric Flair. Right now, probably Kenny Omega. Yeah.
Does that?
I know who it is.
I like MJF a lot. That's my guy. Yeah.
Oh yeah, MJF.
MJF.
Yeah.
Come on now. Come on now.
He's the future is now with him.
Adam Cole.
Baby.
Baby.
God. Right now,
The Miz.
yeah, MJF. I think. I think so.
We're Long Island boys, that's why.
So just,
Yeah.
just give us the go ahead and we'll start. Yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm going to start then. Sweet. Let's go. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the National, and welcome to the first time ever wrestling trading cards being featured at the National. We are so thrilled to be here. My name is Paul. I'm from the Wrestling Card Price Guide. I'm here with my associate Tony Vella from WrestlingTradingCards.com. And Tony and I do a monthly show that's called What's Going On in Wrestling Cards. We film it every month. It's available to be watched on WTC TV, which is WrestlingTradingCards.com. So this afternoon, because we have limited time, we're going to talk for about 40 minutes about the past, present, and future of wrestling trading cards, and then we're going to turn it over to you guys if you have any questions, anything like that. Tony and I are going to be talking about the past, and then Chuck and Caleb are going to be talking about the present, and then the Card Foundation brothers are going to be talking about the future. So I'll get cooking. Tony and I are talking about the past, and it's quite easy for us, or it comes naturally to us, because we run 2 websites that do nothing but archive wrestling cards. So we have complete checklists of everything that's ever been made. So if you're into wrestling cards, you go to WrestlingTradingCards.com or the Wrestling Card Price Guide, and it's all there for you. So we're going to start going back to the earliest days of wrestling cards, and then when we get up to modern day, we'll pass it along to Chuck and Caleb. Tony, let's start with you, and let's talk about the pre-war era.
God, I mean, let's see. Wrestling cards go back to the late 1800s.
Yep.
Probably some of the oldest cards that are out there are entertainment and wrestling cards. I know many of you are probably thinking, how old is Hulk Hogan? But it doesn't go that far back. Yeah, so I mean, they're usually mixed in with a lot of entertainment stuff and sports mixed in stuff. So you'll have like fencing and horse riders and things like that, and entertainers. Then you kind of move into the early 1900s with Allen and Genter stuff, and that's pretty much all the pre-war stuff. So really no big star names back then, mostly styles jiu-jitsu type stuff and things like that, but we didn't really start seeing anything until like the 1950s.
Right.
Yeah.
And once we're done, once the pre-war ends, we get into what we call the vintage era of wrestling trading cards. And there's some sort of controversy as to when the vintage era starts and ends. I like to think that vintage is pre-1980, but a lot of people think that 1980s are included in vintage, which makes me feel old. But some of the cards from those eras, and
Because
again,
you are old.
Yeah, I guess. And this isn't exhaustive at all. We're just picking out some of the past wrestling cards that have come out, been released, that we're really fond of. But in the vintage era, we had a set in the 1950s from a company in Toronto called Parkhurst. That's actually where I'm from, Toronto, Canada. And it was the first dedicated wrestling set that came out. 2 sets in 1955 and 1956. There was also, during that era...
Our show will be closing in 1 hour at 6 p.m. tonight.
They're closing in an hour.
Our show will reopen tomorrow morning at
This is so typical for wrestling.
at 9:30 for our VIP early entry passes. And at 10 a.m. for our general admission passes.
Yeah.
Dealers! Get your booth for the 2023 National.
They should have did this in the Mean Gene Okerlund voice.
We're talking over here.
And higher. We select tomorrow morning, beginning at 7:15 in room 202. Again, dealer booth lottery kicks off tomorrow morning. Priority number is 15 and higher.
Didn't count on this.
Yeah. No, I didn't either.
202.
I can't
Thank you.
I know.
Okay, back to wrestling cards. And one thing I forgot. One thing I forgot to do right off the top is there's a few thank yous in order. First of all, James, that's doing all the AV stuff. Thank you very much. I'd also like to thank Dave and Ethan from Ripping Wax that gave us this forum. And probably most important is the organizers themselves. Megan from the National, she was great. We were talking to her forever. And Mr. Dan Burkus, the head man. He was very keen to have us on here, and we thank him for finally letting us talk about wrestling cards. So I was saying about the Parkhurst, there was also some exhibit supply postcards, black and white, in the 1950s. In the 1970s, we had magazine cards. People like to cut out magazines and then have them slabbed. In 1980, we had a set come out with some figures from Japan called Papi Kawijara. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Kajiwara?
He would know.
Yeah, exactly. We also had in 85, 87 the Tops WWF cards. And then in 1998, you know the Tops? And then in 1998, there was a series put out by a company called Wonderama, which is a huge set of like some 350 cards or something like that. And then Tony's going to now talk about the WCW era in the 1990s.
That's when things really started kicking in for wrestling cards.
Start with the Impels.
Yeah, we can go with the 1991 Impels that people say I'm probably still printing those out of my storage unit, probably. I mean, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a box somewhere, apparently. They're here. I don't think that we really started seeing a real change in wrestling cards until like the late 90s, 98, 99, when WCW was kind of giving WWF a run for its money. And Topps put out 3 really important card sets that came out that time. 1998 Series 1, 1999 Nitro, and Emboss, which included the first time ever on-card autograph cards. Well, I mean, we go back to 94 with the Undertaker and Savage one, but you're talking 101 pack-pulled autograph cards from so many legends at that time. You had Hogan, and you had Mr. Perfect, and you had Savage, and Elizabeth, and Scott Hall, and Kevin Nash, and you name it. Anybody who was popular at that time had an autograph card, which was amazing to pull that out of packages. Today, that stuff is probably like, outside of the 82 All-Stars, pretty much the holy grail of modern wrestling cards, because they've exploded in price. Then you had Comic Images putting out stuff with The Rock. Everybody fans of The Rock? I mean, it's a first official autograph card, came out in 98 Superstars. Highly desirable card, very expensive if you can find it. Of course, then he has a couple of cards that are still wrestling related, but you got Scorpion King and Mama Returns he signed for as well. And he hasn't signed cards since, which is incredible. But what else we got? We got Fleer stuff coming up too.
Yeah, so there was a bunch of stuff that came out in between 2001 and 2004. There's 14 sets by a company called Fleer. They're not in business anymore. But some of the highlights of those 14 sets is we had the first Divas set, which was a dedicated women's wrestling set. In 2002, we had the Royal Rumble set, which had a rookie class of Brock Lesnar, Randy Orton, John Cena, and Batista. Yeah. So that's a highly desirable set. And also during that time, we started to see more things like insert cards and autographs. We have the Hurricane Mask and the Farouk knee brace that are very, very rare cards, hard to find. But those are among some of the most popular cards that you're going to find in the past is the Fleer era. And another comparable era I'm going to give to Tony is the TriStar TNA era.
Oh, geez. The TriStar stuff, I think, is grossly undervalued and underrated. It's they put out some really good stuff that I think is going to start catching on here real soon. The issue with wrestling cards for me, as I've been saying it for the last couple of years since we started doing the podcast, was wrestling has never really gotten the love that it deserves when it comes to collectibles as far as trading cards, because there's not enough zeros behind it like other sports. But that's changing. We're having cards that you could pick up back in the day for $100, $200, seeing $20,000, $30,000, for these cards. That's a huge return, and people are really kind of gravitating towards that era of stuff. And TriStar put out a tremendous amount of great, unique autograph cards, memorabilia cards that you just don't see even in today's product. I kind of wish that some of the manufacturers today would kind of take a little bit of a cue from the old stuff and say, this is some really cool stuff. We should probably bring that back. It's always the same T-shirts and ring mats when people were doing steel chairs and it was just a piece of the table and milk cartons for Kurt Angle and things like that. It was just incredible stuff.
And then from 2006 to 2020, for quite a long stretch, Topps had the WWE license. So we had something like 80 sets or something come out during that time. And some of the highlights of that era, in 2006 we had a product called Heritage Chrome, which was the first sort of shiny set, which are very popular now, the first metallic treatment on cards. I noted 2010 Top Platinum. I think Chuck would agree that's one of our favorite sets of all time. We find that for people that started to collect rainbows, and parallels, you could do the 5 different colors of cards, and they became very popular. And they had some good, there were some good titles during that time. Undisputed, NXT, Finest, Chrome, Transcendent, which was very, very high end. And then we also had Topps On Demand, the first time we'd have wrestling cards where you can order them online, and then based on what the number of people wanted them, that's what they would actually print. And the last bit that I'll give to Tony is on the Leaf trading cards. Leafs are here, and they've had quite an impact in our hobby as well. Yeah, Leaf has done some interesting stuff over the years where they've had some actual card sets that are just strictly wrestling, but lately with their Pop Century stuff and other types of releases they put out, they'll always insert some sort of wrestlers in there, be Hogan or Flair, or now it's been Cena in the new 2022 Pop Century. They really do love their wrestlers, and they actually like to put them in there. Their wrestling sets they put out, they were very unique because they were like a lot of Japanese stars that people really didn't know here in the States, in addition to all your big stars, and some unique combos of autographs. You'd get a Ric Flair and a Hogan on the same card autographed. You'd get some really unique combinations of signers. And so I hope that Leaf does put something out. I know that we're going to be talking to them sometime soon about some upcoming wrestling card sets, but it's really good stuff they put out. Okay, so that's our time. We're now going to pass over to Chuck Davey and Caleb, and they're going to talk about what's happened recently, so in the present. Everybody actually has to go over here with, this is actually Chuckster. We all call him Chuckster. So everybody give some love here to Mr. Chuckster. This guy's been doing archiving. He's the lead archivist for WrestlingTradingCards.com. I couldn't have it to where it is today without this guy.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Paul. As I said, my name's Charles Davey. I'm pretty well known in the wrestling card community as the Chuckster, as they've just pointed out. And again, I am the lead contributor to Tony's WrestlingTradingCard.com, and I'm also a frequent contributor to the Wrestling Card Price Guide with Paul and Ann. And I've been a wrestling card collector for probably about 40 years, so I've seen a lot of stuff come and go. But the one thing I've been asked to speak today on is about the present day wrestling cards. There's way too many right now to mention tonight. Most of them came from Topps, but there's one set that I would like to focus on. Our hobby in the last couple of years has really seen a lot of growth, and one part of that growth has been Upper Deck entering into the wrestling card hobby. This past year saw them release the very first AEW card set, also known as All Elite Wrestling, and in my opinion, Upper Deck really knocked this set out of the park. It has some amazing stuff in it. And the buzz around the release in this set was just something I've never seen in the wrestling card hobby before. Everybody was talking about this for almost a year before the release. And I've just never seen this much excitement about a release. Upper Deck also changed the way wrestling cards have been collected in the modern era. In the past, box breaks have always been the key way to get your wrestling cards, but Upper Deck changed that up a little bit because of the high rising prices of hobby boxes. Upper Deck started releasing e-packs on their website, which has really been a big deal in the community. It's really seemed to have taken off. People really like it. They also introduced some really nice new inserts into our hobby that we've never seen before. Most notably, they released what they called shadow box cards, and they released canvas cards, which I don't know why anybody never did that before, because you got wrestling mats and canvas. What goes better hand in hand? That was a really smart marketing move. I love that. Another big change in our hobby in the modern day has been the increase of parallel sets in our hobby. Now, we've always had parallel sets, but Upper Deck has taken it to a whole new level. There are so many parallels out there now. And one of the parallels I'd like to kind of point out and focus on is a really neat cross promotion they did with the action figure collectors. Most action figure collectors just collect action figures, and I'm not sure they're aware of wrestling cards. AEW began inserting these Upper Deck wrestling cards into their packages of action figures. And I think that kind of introduced a lot of new collectors, people who never even knew wrestling cards existed because they were so focused on their figures. And I think that was a fantastic marketing move to create those two together. They also released promo sheets at the New York Comic Con a year or two ago, and they released some promo sheets at Florida AEW Fan Fest this past year, which is promoting their soon-to-be-released second set that should be coming out sometime this year. On a final note on these cards and their marketing, AEW actually has begun marketing AEW cards on their weekly programming, which is something I don't think we've ever seen in the hobby before. If it has been done, it's been very few and far between, but they now have graphics on the screen on the lower corner of their programming advertising the cards. They have the announcers talking about the cards. It's just a really great way. I mean, AEW and Upper Deck has worked hand in hand in promoting this, and I think they've just done a marvelous job. Another thing is, wrestling cards has always had a really small but faithful following. And in the past year or two, especially since the pandemic has kicked in and people got into more card collecting, we've seen a big rise in the amount of wrestling collectors we have in our hobby. And it's just really grown, and I know it's going to continue to grow because there's so much good stuff out here now. And we've got all kinds of new companies entering in, just recently Upper Deck, and I'm sure you'll hear in a little bit more. We had another company called Panini that has also entered our great hobby. Last thing I kind of want to touch on is our hobby now has also seen the rise of so many wrestling card podcasts. Tony and Paul run one once a month called, tell me what it's called, guys.
It's a real great title. What's going on with wrestling cards?
There you go.
That's my brain idea.
And if you really want to follow and learn more about wrestling cards, Twitter seems to be the place online to go to get information about it, interact with other collectors. So as far as I'm concerned, the present day hobby has just grown in leaps and bounds. It used to be people was kind of embarrassed to say they collected wrestling cards, but not anymore. We've got so many people in this hobby, and it's just taken off. I just really feel like wrestling cards the last year or so has come out of the shadows, and it's only going to continue to grow. The next part of our modern day wrestling card segment, I would like to turn over to Caleb Edkins, who's going to talk a little bit more about the indie card side of our hobby. Caleb?
Thank you, Chuck. Just to give a little bit of background about myself before I get started with independent cards, my name is Caleb Edkins. I'm from North Carolina, also known as Collecting with Caleb online. And I started out my collecting as a kid, collecting baseball, basketball, football. And then as we moved into kind of the pandemic era of collecting, I found myself priced out of a lot of traditional sports products and started looking for other avenues that I could engage with cards in, and came across wrestling cards. And I was a really big wrestling fan when I was little, so I had that big nostalgia factor that I kind of latched onto. And I'm so thankful that I have ended up collecting them because I've met some awesome people along the way doing it. But just to build off what Chuck was talking about, as we were waiting in anticipation for AEW's first set to come out, as hype was really building with Topps Chrome this past year, a lot of people started kind of going down the rabbit hole and trying to get ahead of AEW and figure out, okay, does this person on AEW, say MJF, does MJF have any cards out there that I can collect until this new set comes out? And that's where independent wrestling cards come into play. So before these people were on TV, a lot of them wrestle in independent promotions all across the country. And some of these promotions even put out their own trading card sets. And so this is kind of the way I like to look at it for those of you that collect sports cards, is this is like a Bowman's first card, in my opinion, for these people. This is pre the big leagues, and a lot of times it's their first ever appearance on cardboard. So there's a lot of companies out there like GCW, Limitless, PWG, Ignite Wrestling, Blitzkrieg. All these companies have been really good about putting out card sets, and in the past, I would say probably year and a half, 2 years, they've really started to grow in popularity as people found out not only that they existed, but also how rare they are. Because these are small promotions putting out these sets, they might not always have the biggest budget for their merchandise. So a lot of these cards are very, very low print runs. Some of the biggest print runs when it comes to independent wrestling cards are the All-In set. And that's around 2,000, 2,500 sets, somewhere in that range, which is nothing compared to modern trading cards. And it goes all the way from that, which is kind of like the high number for these cards, all the way down to Limitless Wrestling, which has really gained popularity in the past probably year, I would say, which it's believed that there's 25 to 30 maybe of those sets floating around. And that set has lots of big players in it. That has MJF's rookie year card, it has Darby Allin in there. In the second year of it, it's got Austin Theory's first card ever. So all kinds of incredible talent can be found in these trading card sets. And because there's such a natural rarity to them, this is not something that you can go on eBay and type in and find lots of different choices for. So in a lot of cases, you really have to do some digging to find these cards. But that is something that I personally really enjoyed, and something that drew me to independent wrestling cards, is I had to go on this treasure hunt to find out that the cards even existed in the first place. And then once I realized what I wanted, I had to dig even deeper to find the cards. But this has been something that's given wrestling collectors an opportunity to participate in some prospecting, which you guys may know is very big in sports cards. Lots of people want to buy in early for the young stars, hold them for the future. And correct me if I'm wrong, but wrestling has not always been that way. It's been more so collecting the GOATs, the well-established wrestlers. So this has allowed for wrestling card collectors to have a new way to collect. We've seen some really substantial sales for independent wrestling cards in the past year or so. Since Limitless Wrestling has kind of risen to the forefront, we've seen four-figure sales for a complete set of that. We've seen multiple $100 sales for later independent wrestling cards of MJF. So as far as this goes, I'm excited about the future of independent wrestling cards, and can't wait to see where they take us. And building off that, I'll go ahead and pass it on to the Card Foundation guys to talk about where wrestling cards is going to go.
All right, so where is this all going? So before we get started, my name is Johnny Tancredi. This is my brother Danny Tancredi. We are the Card Foundation podcast, weekly episodic podcast on all the major platforms. Every Thursday we have new episodes, and we really like to talk mostly about what's going on in the modern wrestling card world and what's coming in the future. You know, kind of what to prepare for. Tony's done an amazing job with his material, his podcast, and everything, talking about a lot of the vintage stuff. And we kind of pride ourselves on what's going on now and what's coming. So I guess we could start off with really, right now, the main players in the wrestling card world is Upper Deck, who's doing the AEW. They have the AEW exclusive, and Panini, who I know, if you're a card collector, you know who Panini is. They've been around a million years, and they do baseball, they do football, basketball, and now they have the WWE license. So you have these two major companies putting out cards for two competing wrestling federations, and that's kind of where we are in terms of what's going on. And I think a good kind of where we can kick it off is like Prism, because I think Prism coming out this year for wrestling and WWE was something that was just, it kind of changed the game in terms of wrestling cards. We never saw anything like this. So I'll turn it over to Danny.
Yeah, so for Panini Prism, it was kind of monumental for wrestling cards because it drew, obviously, the most eyes on the hobby. So Topps and Topps Chrome and some of the other Topps products, they did a really, really good job of being able to put out great product. But with Panini taking over, you got an influx of newer collectors who are fans of Panini Prism in football, in basketball, and soccer, and all these different sports. So now that it hits wrestling, it takes off. And I think the most important thing to look at right away is boxes come out at $800 a box. And right away, wrestling card collectors are like, whoa, this is kind of new to us because we're used to boxes being at $100, $75, $150 maybe. So for Prism to start out that way and it sells out all over the place, I think it was important for people to recognize, say, hey, wrestling shouldn't be played with. And then boxes over time continue to go $1,000, $1,300. You're seeing some of the most popular breakers in the hobby, they're ripping wrestling. And it's fantastic to see. And with AEW competing with them, on TV every week, it just breeds for not only better wrestling, but for better cards product. So being able to now have AEW and Panini producing great cards, it's great for all of us because now we could round out our collections with guys from AEW who had independent cards, and now we're getting flagship type cards. And then you got your WWE superstars who now you could collect Topps and Panini. So it just makes collecting overall just better.
Yeah, I mean, for the first time, I think we're having wrestlers being compared to some of the other guys in the hobby, like a Joe Burrow, like a Justin Herbert, or a Giannis Antetokounmpo from the NBA. I mean, we're seeing, John Cena and The Rock and Roman Reigns sales within Prism that are rivaling some of these cards. We saw a ton of record sales over the last, I'd say, 6 months on the secondary market. Both vintage and this new modern Prism stuff. I mean, there was actually two sales this past year, last couple months, where we saw an Andre the Giant card from 1973 and an Andre the Giant card from 2022, both set records and sell for 5 figures. And honestly, as a wrestling collector, I never really thought we'd get to that point where we'd see a vintage and a modern card from the same exact person reach 5 figures. I mean, we struggle just to get to 5 figures for anything. So the fact that we're getting these 5-figure sales and we're getting all this hype on social media and podcasts, it's great for the hobby. Now, Panini is looking forward. Panini's got a bunch of product coming out the rest of the year. They have Select, which is going to be a product that a lot of collectors that collect in football and basketball and baseball are used to. We're getting it in WWE for the first time. One big card that I know that's going to come out of that set is going to be Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes recently jumped from AEW back to WWE, and now he's getting right into the mix, and he's probably going to be one of the few, if not the first, AEW guy to have an AEW card and a WWE Panini card. So that's something that I know collectors are going to be into, and
same year.
And in the same year, within a couple months of each other. And aside from Select, I know that they have a couple other products coming out. I know there's a high-end product coming out later on in the year. It wasn't announced yet, I don't believe, but it's probably going to be in like the immaculate kind of reign. So we're gonna see cards in a high-end product that we've never seen before. Relics and on-card autos of wrestlers that just never existed within the hobby. And I know Upper Deck is doing a lot of the same things.
Yeah, Upper Deck is going to be taking over with Spectrum, and then they're releasing their second flagship. So technically, the first one that came out earlier in the year was a 2021 product. We're getting a flagship for 2022 as well. I think this is just great all around. We're seeing even high popularity in wrestling. I mean, we got hundreds of millions of people worldwide watching WrestleMania every year. We got north of 2 million people every week watching AEW, SmackDown, and Raw. So kind of to the point that Johnny made before about just the popularity of wrestling compared to other sports, we're seeing groundbreaking pricing and competing against guys like that. And I think that's important too, because if we continue to get autographs and relics that are selling for $5, $10, $15, I don't think collectors from other worlds are going to take it as serious as they should. So the fact that Prism drops and we're seeing an Ultimate Warrior card sell for $15,000, I mean, that's pretty damn impressive. You know, so the more that it continues to grow, the more that Panini is going to be invested into it. Eventually, one day, Fanatics is going to be invested into it as well when they get the license, and then Upper Deck is going to continue as well. So this competition, the popularity, everybody coming together from, you know, the vintage people to the modern plus future, we're going to continue to do the best we can to promote the hobby and continue to grow it the best we can.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of tools that are being used within the hobby now that are applying to wrestling cards where I don't think they were really being applied, you know, up until this point. You know, we have our own subcategory on Whatnot, which is growing into a massive selling platform within the hobby. You know, up until about, I guess, we got on it maybe a couple months ago, 6-7 months ago, and now there's a wrestling subset. So now if you break wrestling cards on Whatnot, you can actually schedule a show under the wrestling card banner. You can check out an app like Card Ladder. And Wrestling Cards has its own section on Card Ladder where you can actually see what's trending, how far wrestling card sales go back, maybe a month, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years. So we're actually now seeing this data being compiled for wrestling cards in the modern era, which is something that, you know, I mean, especially with wrestling, we just weren't seeing to the same level as a baseball, football, or a basketball. Grading has taken off. And we're seeing a ton of grading come in through wrestling cards. I mean, we're seeing sales now. Vintage wrestling cards are now getting graded, and they're going for a lot of money. And they're kind of rivaling some of those vintage cards in other sports. And we're seeing a lot more with BGS. We're seeing a lot with SGC, so it's not just PSA. I think SGC might even be the biggest at this point with wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotten to a point where now wrestling cards trend every week on Wednesday. We call it Wrestling Card Wednesday. And it's companies now taking part of it and posting some of the slabs that they're putting out. It's people like us, and I'm sure many of you in the crowd as well, just posting some of your favorite wrestling cards, whether it be a Roman Reigns auto or a Sasha Banks auto. And the more popular it gets, even amongst those companies, to recognize that wrestling cards are important and there's a ton of collectors out there that want it, again, the better it's just going to end up being for all of us in the long run.
Yeah, and lastly, to kind of tie everything together, where I think this is truly going is I think we're going to go only up at this point, because like we said before, Panini is putting out a bunch of products throughout this year. They're going to go right into 2023. Upper Deck is the same thing. We've spoken with Upper Deck, and they already have plans for 2023 and beyond with the AEW line. So I think that really the future is within wrestling. There's a lot of room to grow, and I think it's very exciting.
Thanks very much, guys. That was awesome. We're going to turn it over to you now, and if you have any questions. But before we do that, there's just a couple of people we'd like to thank that couldn't be on stage with us that are very instrumental to our hobby. First is Zan Morning, that does a podcast similar to what Tony does, and he's been instrumental in sort of spreading the good word about wrestling. Also, Anthony Havlovic, Husker Hav. He's got a site that sells individual wrestling cards, and I'd be amiss if I didn't throw a shout out to our vintage guys, Rob and Dave. But anyways, if anyone has any questions directed towards any of us, please let us know.
So with Panini, so Fanatics is obviously taking over. Was it 2026? I want to say.
Looks like 26.
So it looks like they're going to have the license up until 2026. Then that's when Fanatics, because the WWE license will go back to Topps, which inherently is Fanatics anyway.
Just to cut in, I think it's important too, because we've discussed this with Panini on our podcast, and they're incredibly passionate about the wrestling product. They have legitimate wrestling fans that are creating the designs, that are figuring out the checklist. I mean, I think we saw it with, if anyone got to rip open Panini Revolution, that was a product that was on the lower end that really anyone didn't think was going to take off. And in terms of popularity, it might have even superseded Prism. So the fact that they're coming out with sets with different tag teams you haven't seen cards in a while and different superstars, you know, it shows how much they care. So from however long Panini has this license, we trust that they're going to do a bang-up job. Well, I think everyone was happy about that except for Kenny Omega being featured. They would have liked to have seen a John Cena or someone like that, but even for a card to come out like that from Leaf to recognize and say, hey, we're putting out 3 legends, even though Kenny Omega might not be a legend, it draws a lot of interest and it draws a lot of attention. So it's the more the merrier in terms of what they could do with dual autos, quad autos, and just wrestling cards in general.
Yes, sir. So the question is, what do we think, in case you didn't hear, the question is, what do we think about the drop that's happened in the last couple of months? Yeah, with Prism. I'll give that one to you, Tony.
Where do I start? People forget, when Prism was first announced, the suggested retail price on that was $150 a box. Now, we know that's not going to be true. But it jumped like everything else. People who are normally collect Prism are your traditional stick and balls collectors. So they knew. I guess it kind of falls in the pump and dump type thing, right?
That was a nice little quote you had there.
Yeah, stick and ball?
Yeah.
Stick and ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can edit that out, right? It's just that with that product, it became like the hype was so big that I don't know if it could really sustain that hype for so long. It was good because it actually introduced a bigger spotlight on our hobby, which is really what we wanted, was a bigger spotlight on our hobby, to be taken seriously like other sports. And that's what it did. It did its job. But you have to understand I think they're still printing that stuff because it's just so readily available. People were looking at hobby boxes, then you had blaster boxes. You can order, it's available everywhere. And we didn't have that before in wrestling where it was available everywhere. And so the market's going to, kind of fall a little bit. And we're also on a downturn in the hobby in the industry anyways across the board. I believe everybody's probably suffering from markets leveling out when it comes to the pricing and stuff like that too. So wrestling's not going to be different than anybody else. But to see it come this far down though, I think I just saw some as least low as $350 a box. Honestly, just being honest, I wouldn't be surprised to see it come down to $250, $200.
But I think it's good though.
I think it is.
I think it's good for the collectors because in the beginning it was a little tough for everybody to break that product, and now they can, or at least more people can. And when the box price or the hobby box price comes down, typically the singles will come down. So now people are not overspending on base rookie cards, and they're going after some of the refractors they can actually afford. They can player collect again, and go after a rainbow possibly for maybe a lesser collected guy because they can now afford to.
That's what got me in it. That's what got me.
Right, and
I would have never. I've always been a Kurt Angle collector, and then I said, I want to try something modern. I'm going to go after Dexter Lumis of all people, but it made it affordable for me to have someone like that and go after a rainbow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, I think we're all collectors here. So as a collector, I think honestly, it's a good thing.
Just a little touch on. I hate that we're in the breaker section. Because not to blast any of the breakers, but I think that when Prism came out, it was a pump and dump, and the Prism boys came out. They were able to make a little bit of money, and then from there, it's like, well, 50% of your interest in the card just went down. So right away, if no one's going to be breaking it, hobby shops are going to sit there and say, I've been sitting on this product for how long? And then the eBay sales trickle in, and it goes to 500, to 4, to 350, and that doesn't do it any favors. But again, I think it's an even better time to now buy and say, hey, I could take a risk on a hobby box, and who knows, maybe you pull a Color Blast, maybe you pull something low numbered, and the collector wins at the end of the day when prices come down a little bit.
Yeah, it affected like set collectors. That Prism really affected set collectors. They were in fear that they couldn't afford to even build a base set. And we have a lot of people in this hobby that are, either they're player collectors or they're just base set collectors, and they thought they couldn't afford it. I think the real one we should have been worried about was Revolution, because Revolution became a really hot product, and in my opinion, it's a better product. And that's a really tough base set to put together because there's less of it printed than there was Prism.
And shout out to the Sports Card Nobody podcast.
Also, another shout out in my thanks. I forgot to thank Nick, the Crazy Card Collector, for filming us today and for helping us out. Any other questions, guys? Yes, sir. Uh-oh. Very good question.
Yeah, very good question.
Very good question.
Who wants to take that?
Well, it's a future thing, guys.
I mean, I think there has to be, just because of the name recognition that comes along with both of them. You know, there are people that collect Topps Chrome, there are people that collect Prism. You know, some people collect both, but there also has their own religious kind of cult following for both of them. You know, coming from me, I'm a fan of both. I collect Topps Chrome. I love the baseball set that they put out each year. But with Prism, I recognize how big it is within the hobby in terms of, you know, its status in basketball and football. So I think there almost has to be, you know, both. Maybe one of them is a little bit less of a price point than the other. You know, maybe they kind of keep one for one section of the hobby and one for the other. But I don't think they should both go away, or one should just take over.
I think on top of that, there's room for multiple types of Prism Chrome kind of stock cards. So, I mean, we see it with Topps now as it is with, you'll get, you know, Allen Ginter and then Allen Ginter Chrome, Stadium Club Chrome. So we're getting multiple Chrome style releases throughout the year. Why not have you know, if they keep the Topps name, so to speak, if they ended up buying Panini, Topps Prism, you know, they could make that its own set, and then it just adds to the long line of Topps products that they have. So I hope that they would end up keeping both, because again, both products are fantastic and they kind of offer different things, different type of parallels. And, you know, with Panini, if they do like a select style product, you get all the different crazy borders of, you know, what is it, snakeskin now, and just all the different stuff that they're doing. So, you know, I would take both.
Now, I've always been a set collector all my life, and with the recent rise in popularity and the prices going up on these, I've really had to change the way I collected. I'm never going to give up collecting. They're always going to be in my life. But I really had to change, because as much as I love breaking the boxes, it was also breaking me. So I just decided I was just waiting until it got out there and people were putting together sets, and I was just going after buying the base set anymore and a few insert sets. Although I enjoyed the breaking, I just couldn't do it anymore. But I think there's a market for high end and low end. You know, get the high end for the really the people who really want to invest in these cards. Get some lower end for some of the newbies that are getting into the hobby, or for the kids who can still afford it and want to go into a store and just pick up a couple packs. So there's room for both in the hobby, but again, for us set collectors, our true set collectors like myself and Paul, we've done it for so many years, and we were always completists. Now we can't be anymore. Number one, because of the price. Number two, because there are so many parallels. We just can't do the collecting the way we like to. So Paul and I have both decided just to go for the base set and the insert sets, and as far as any autos or memorabilia cards, we just kind of, if they come along our way, we come along, but if we get just the basic, we're happy. So, you know, like I said, there's always ways to change your way of collecting, and that's what I've done.
Yep. There we go.
One of the greatest dream matches.
So the question is, will we ever see an Undertaker Sting dual auto card? Since we never got the match, will we see the card?
Well,
one thing I'm going to say before I hand it off, never say never in wrestling.
No.
Because literally everything always happens. So
So that's a definite maybe.
Well, it would probably take someone like a Leaf to do it.
Yeah.
You know, with AEW having Sting, with Undertaker being a WWE Legends deal. That's the only holdup, is really, I think, more so the Undertaker than it is Sting. Would be incredible. Yeah.
Well, would Fitterman factor into that as well?
right now it would, yeah. Because you know they do have the Undertaker and the WWE as part of their lineup. So yeah, for sure.
And Undertaker wasn't signing his rookie cards, his '91 Classic. And that became a huge thing with collectors because they're taking it to, shows and conventions just to have him sign it.
Well, Fitterman is charging $4.99.
Right. Yeah, that just changed pretty recently. So at least he's doing it now. But
thanks, guys. So my question is, and I've had this argument, not this discussion with other collectors, is do you feel that the current crop of wrestlers drives products or the legends drive products? Because for me, it's about the legends. I'm all about Macho Man, Undertaker.
Ooh, yeah.
I'm justifiably in a position.
That's pretty good.
So, for me, when I see a checklist come out and I see it's all modern, I'm like, eh. But like when Revolution came out, and not only did they have Macho Man, because he wasn't in prison, but they had Macho Man, but they also had the Mega Powers. So for me, that was a huge selling point. I want to get your thoughts on that.
I think for me, I think it draws on both. Because I think wrestling, the cards itself, with the rise of people like Roman Reigns and Becky Lynch and things like that, and Alexa Bliss, who is arguably the #1 selling female wrestler of all time now. I mean, her stuff consistently sells at high numbers. It's a mix of both. I think having a nice mix of a checklist. I think Prism was a really good one. We all agreed that when it came out, like, this is a great checklist. And then I think Revolution, like you said, came out and made it even better. So I think it's a mix of both. Guys who like vintage stuff and guys who like new stuff. It attracts both people. No, I think it helps. I think it did at this point. Yes. If you want to keep the hobby growing, you're going to have a mixture of both. You got to have both.
At least on your big flagships, anyways,
Yeah, if you got your flagships,
there's going to be NXT variations and there's going to be smaller versions. But on your flagships and on your names like Select and Revolution and Prism, I think the more extensive this checklist, the better it's going to be for collectors.
If I'm paying $1,000 for a box, it better have a mix of good stuff.
It's funny too, on our show, we do a segment each week where we kind of highlight some of the bigger eBay sales over the last maybe week or so from the last episode. And honestly, each week when we do the research, there's a mixture of both. It's modern stuff, it's vintage stuff, it's vintage wrestlers in a modern setting. We're seeing a little bit of everything. So I think that's kind of where we are.
It's important to know because we didn't even talk about it at all. Like, I see you out there, Brian. He's going, "What the hell happened to my Wrestling All Stars?" What? You have to mention the 1982 Wrestling All Stars for sure, and 83 All Stars. I mean, that's comparable to that's our Mickey Mantle set. That's our Jordan set. That contains early cards of Hogan and Flair and Andre. It's the big deal for us, and that's what's for vintage. That's what people look at when it comes to vintage, is that set. There's other stuff that's earlier. There's stuff from Japan. There's other things like that. But 82, 83 All-Stars, that's where it's at.
And if you don't include Legends in some of the more modern sets, we've got so many younger collectors getting into the hobby that really weren't around when a lot of these guys were in their heyday. And if they get these sets, they're going to go back and...
I appreciate it. Thank you.
they're going to go back and they're going to look at these cards and say, well, who is this guy? And they're going to research him. And that's the way you continue wrestling history, is because you got to have both of them in the set. It's great to have modern, but you got to have those vintage, so some of the newer people into the hobby can really know wrestling history and know why those cards are important to the hobby.
Yes, sir.
I just had a quick question. I'm coming a little late, but did you touch on anything with the amateur wrestling, like the 72 Gable or any of that kind of stuff, like how that's become mainstream?
That's where I wish we had a Rob England up here, because that's like right up his alley and it's like that. Not so much in the amateur stuff, but I mean, you get you talk 95, 98 Kurt Angle stuff. That actually does really well. It predates any of his pro wrestling stuff, and that would command some really big money, because when it was short printed, you had to be at the event for the championships to get that, and that's an exception right there.
Also, Gable Stevenson now being in the WWE, that's kind of prompted a lot of the modern guys. He's looked at as one of the top, guys to prospect or rookies right now. But we saw a lot of his stuff go up.
Anybody else?
Good.
All right, folks. Well, thank you very much for listening to us, and enjoy the rest of your show. Thank you.
We have. Go ahead. We have some exclusive cards that we made for the event. We'll have them up here if you guys want to come up and grab one. I know Tony's also got some cards too, so.
Oh, you have?
Thank you.
Thank you.
How you guys doing? Danny.
Oh, hey. What's going on? Hey, how's it going?
I hate you, man. I hate you. You just put our bags in the car.
We're going to be here tomorrow. We're going to be here, so.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate that a lot.
It's been a long time coming, man.
I know. I got to stand up. I was standing up all day and I was ready to sit down. Now I'm ready to stand up again.
Hey,
thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much for listening.
Shut these down.
Hey, Brody.
Keep
Thank
hearing
you,
you
man.
guys.
Appreciate it.
Enjoy.
Get you on soon, okay? I like what you're
What's
doing.
going on?
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, finally, right?
What's up, man? Good.
How you doing? Yeah, pleasure. Danny.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for
Thank you so much. Thank you. Hey, what's
We
going
just
on?
got more status.
Yeah.
Hey, that's the key right there. What are we doing with this? All right, here we go.
Tony, how are you?
Good, man. How are you? Hey, Norton. Nice to meet you.
You as well. I had Sam Morning on the podcast a while ago.
Yeah, sure.
And I would love to get you on one of these.
Love to be on. Like, I met Andrew podcast. Like, there was no way.
Thanks for seeing the
website.
Couldn't get off work.
Our 20th anniversary this year for checklist information.
I thought I was gonna get like a little.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Appreciate that.
Love to be on. Just reach out to me, man.
Yeah, I will. I will.
Cards.com. Everything's on there.
Yeah, I'll definitely reach out.
Thanks for coming.
8 o'clock.
We got to talk too. I've got to get a cool thing going.
Yeah, dude, I would love to do something.
Absolutely.
Hey, thank you, man. Thanks for showing up.
I am still so jealous. Best.
You're done, right?
Yes.
I'm waiting for the cease and desist from Bret Hart.
Yes, it's come any day.
Oh, thank you.
Well, again, it's great to meet you.
It was a pleasure, man. Thank you. Big fan.
We'll chat.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without a doubt.
Anybody else?
I need your autograph.
You guys got cards?
Autograph this for me, big guy.
Great job, boys. As always.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, this is awesome.
Who got it still?
This, bro.
There's your first one.
Thank you.
Where we signing this?
Just so it's legible.
You guys should take a picture on the stage.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We should take a group photo too.
Oh, now it's a 101.
Yeah, it's a 101, baby.
Yeah.
That signature, man.
First one, man.
Oh, yeah.
Did you guys get cards? You guys want cards?
I don't see that 315.
Same. Oh, they're all the same. You didn't get that one? No problem.
I think Stone Cold's probably the most undervalued wrestler that's around there. Who's in Brock? What the hell?
They'll be fine. They'll be fine. Thanks, guys.
No, thank you.
Take care, man. We'll rip this later in the airport.
Absolutely.
I'll see you at Hard Rock. Hey, you expect to get you guys?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Nick.
Yeah. Come, jump up with the background. Yeah.
Nick. We want to take a picture.
That's for forgiveness.
Yeah. That's good stuff. You guys kill it as always, man. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, no rush.
You're doing what? Right next to the room.
Right, man. My name's Shane. Nice to meet you. Shane.
Me too. You are obviously.
Yeah, it's wild how much that happens. Like, getting to meet people for real. Beer, get away from me. Just go back on Twitter. Listen to me.
These two guys emailing back and forth.
Wow. That's unreal.
It's the first time we've done it.
Nice to meet you.
Great.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
How you doing? Nice to meet you. Great. Nice to meet you. Oh, nice. I love all your stuff. I should have realized this is
Great job today. Yeah, right.
Why don't you talk about it real quick? Good job. Thank you, man. 20 years for making. Yeah. Just happy to be here. All right, guys. Let's do a quick group picture. Which way we face?
The greatest wrestling minds on the planet on one stage.
Better be if he's in our family.
Like them big boy, Chloe.
You gotta fork it over.
Jake, take a picture. Yeah.
Bear didn't want to come out? Yeah, come out. Make it. You mind taking over mine real quick? That's okay.
Supposed to be.
Yeah, you don't want to compliment all day. Yeah, right? It works.
Good evening. The show floor will be closing in 10 minutes at 6 p.m. We'll be reopening tomorrow morning at 8:30 for our exhibitors, at 9:30 for our VIP early access patrons, and at 10 a.m. for our general admission guests. In addition,